When you're young, you think you have all the time in the world. You imagine growing old with your closest friends, laughing over coffee, reminiscing about the good old days. You believe the people you love will always be around. But life, in its quiet and often cruel way, teaches you otherwise. As the years pass, people drift. Some move away, others grow distant, and sadly, some leave this world altogether. And when the noise of life settles, when careers end, families grow up, and routines become slower, you begin to realize something profoundly important. Very few people truly stay. This video isn't just about friendship, it's about something far deeper. It's about emotional survival, especially for those over 60. Because in this stage of life, it's not about how many friends you have, it's about who's still standing beside you when everything else fades. I've seen this truth up close, not from books, but from real life. From silent corridors of nursing homes to tearful moments in hospital rooms. And what I've discovered is powerful. Only 4 types of friends truly matter in old age. Not 20 Facebook acquaintances. Not the holiday card senders, just 4. Let me walk you through them with honesty, heart, and hope. Number 1, the friend who listens without judgment. Too often, as people age, they begin to feel like background characters in the lives of others. Their presence is acknowledged, but their voice, especially when it carries emotion, history, or pain, is often overlooked. Many older adults speak not to get answers, but simply to be heard. Their stories carry the weight of time, layered with love, regret, lessons, and joy. And yet, in a world that values speed, efficiency, and youth, there is little room left for their narratives. But then there is the rare friend, the one who doesn't just hear noise, they listen with the heart. No corrections, no unsolicited advice, no glances at the phone or clock, just a warm, accepting presence that says, I see you, I hear you, keep going. This kind of friend is a treasure beyond words. As a physician, I've spent years observing the human body in its many stages, how it responds to illness, to medication, and to stress. But perhaps one of the most profound healing agents I've encountered isn't something you'll find in a prescription bottle. It's the quiet, patient power of being listened to. I've literally seen blood pressure drop, not from a new pill, but from a 30-minute conversation where someone felt truly understood. The science backs it up. Genuine listening reduces cortisol, our body's primary stress hormone. It boosts dopamine, that feel-good neurotransmitter tied to pleasure and motivation. Even the immune system gets a lift as stress levels decline and the body returns to balance. Listening is not just emotional support, it is biological medicine, and like any good medicine, it requires the right dosage, time, attention, and compassion. Let me tell you about Mr. Adams, a man well into his 80s with a long history of hypertension and insomnia. He had been prescribed nearly every combination of medications with only mild success. But during one of our checkups, I noticed something different. His blood pressure had dropped significantly, and he seemed unusually relaxed. Curious, I asked if he'd changed anything in his routine. He smiled and said, "You know, Doc, I've been going to the barber every week now, even if I don't need a cut. He just lets me talk. Doesn't interrupt, doesn't tell me I'm wrong, just nods and wipes his scissors. That's enough for me." I was stunned, not by the simplicity of the act, but by how deeply it had affected him. The barber didn't have a PhD in psychology. He wasn't trained in therapeutic techniques, but he had mastered the art of presence, being fully there for another human being. And for Mr. Adams, that was more therapeutic than anything I had prescribed. So how can you be that friend? It's not about having all the right words or knowing how to fix every problem. In fact, it's often better if you don't try to fix anything at all. Here's what truly matters. Don't rush the silence. Older adults especially may pause between thoughts, not because they're confused, but because they're reflecting. Let the silence breathe. It's where the real thoughts live. Don't offer solutions unless asked. Most of the time, people already know what they should do. They just want someone to sit beside them while they process it. Make eye contact. A gentle gaze can say, "I'm here," louder than any words. Resist judgment. Even if you disagree with their choices or views, remember that they're shaped by a lifetime of experiences. Listening without judging creates a safe space, and safety is healing. Value the small stories. Sometimes older adults will share something seemingly trivial, a memory about a song, a detail about their childhood home. But to them, these stories are pieces of identity. Treat them like treasure. Being present is a gift, not just to the person speaking, but to yourself as well. You'll walk away from those moments changed, humbled, wiser, more connected to the humanity that binds us all. In a world that often measures worth by productivity, the simple act of listening is a quiet rebellion. It says, you don't need to do anything to matter. You just need to be. So, if you're lucky enough to be the kind of friend who listens without judgment, know this, you are doing sacred work, and in your quiet presence, healing flows. Number 2, the friend who checks in consistently. There is something almost sacred about consistency, especially as we age. When our days grow quieter and our social circles begin to shrink, even the smallest gestures can carry enormous emotional weight. One of the most powerful yet underestimated gifts we can give an older adult is the gift of regular check-ins. And when that check-in becomes a routine, something predictable and comforting, it turns into what I call predictable kindness. Let me share with you a story that illustrates this beautifully. Samuel, a 74-year-old retired bus mechanic, lived alone in a modest home after his wife passed away. His children had moved to other states, and though he had neighbours who waved politely, his days were mostly filled with silence. That kind of isolation can sneak up on someone, even someone as strong and stoic as Samuel. But something changed when an old friend from his Navy days, Charlie, reached out one day. They talked, laughed about old stories, and made plans to reconnect. Before hanging up, Charlie said, "I'll call you next Sunday, same time." And he did. Every Sunday, without fail, Charlie called, rain or shine. For 15 minutes or 50, it didn't matter. What mattered was that Samuel knew every week there would be one moment he could count on. Over time, that weekly call didn't just lift his spirits, it restructured his emotional rhythm. "I started looking forward to Sundays," Samuel told me once, like a kid waiting for Christmas. This is the power of predictable kindness. We talk a lot in healthcare about the importance of routine, setting a sleep schedule, eating meals at the same time, taking medications consistently. These routines stabilize the body, but few people realize that emotional routines are just as vital for psychological and spiritual health. In my experience, older adults don't crave grand gestures. What they crave is presence, and not just once, but over and over again, in a way that feels stable, dependable, and real. It's the emotional equivalent of knowing your porch light turns on every evening. It's comforting, grounding, and a quiet reminder that someone cares. I once treated a retired school principal named Margaret. After retirement, she began to show signs of depression, withdrawal from social events, a flat affect, trouble sleeping. Her life had gone from being filled with the voices of students and teachers to long, echoing silences. We tried medication and she attended a few therapy sessions, but something was still missing. One day, her niece, a busy corporate executive, had an idea. She set a weekly calendar reminder to call Margaret every Wednesday during her lunch break. Just 10 minutes. Every Wednesday. It was simple, but it was consistent. Within a few weeks, Margaret's mood began to lift. She started dressing up a little on Wednesdays, brushing her hair, even baking a small treat, just in case someone stopped by, though she knew no one would. The anticipation itself was therapy. That 10-minute call didn't just fill time, it filled a need. It became her midweek anchor. You don't need to be a therapist to make a difference. You don't need an hour-long conversation or the perfect words. All you need is consistency. Set a reminder on your phone or calendar to check in with an older adult in your life once a week. It could be a parent, an aunt, an old neighbour, or even someone from your local community centre. You don't need to solve their problems. Just ask how they are. Listen. Share a story or a joke. And don't worry about being eloquent. Genuine care always sounds right. If a call feels too much, send a voice message or even a simple text. The key is consistency. Not every interaction has to be deep. In fact, most won't be, but together they add up to something profound. We often think that big gestures are what show love, but for many older adults, what matters more is knowing that someone is out there, thinking of them, checking in, showing up again and again in the smallest of ways. The miracle isn't in what you say, it's in the quiet, gentle reliability of saying it. week after week. So go ahead, set that reminder today, call them on Wednesday or Sunday, or whenever you can keep the promise, because sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't found in a bottle, it's found in a phone call that always comes on time. Number 3, the friend who shares your values and growth. In the golden years of life, the friendships that matter most aren't built on convenience, proximity, or even history. They're built on depth. The kind of connection that challenges you to grow, reminds you of your worth, and engages your mind and spirit. These are the friendships that become not just emotional support systems, but intellectual and spiritual lifelines. Let's revisit the story of Margaret and Helen. 2 women who met not at a fitness class or senior centre, but at a neighbourhood book group. They didn't bond over shared medical conditions, mutual complaints, or even a long history. They bonded over a shared love of ideas, discussing philosophy, history, ethics, and literature. It wasn't what they read that mattered most, it was how they responded to each other's thoughts and perspectives. Their connection was rooted in a shared intellectual curiosity, a desire to learn, grow, and reflect even in their 70s. It was a friendship of stimulation, not just comfort. We often associate long life with green smoothies, daily walks, and taking our prescribed vitamins on time. While those things certainly matter, they don't tell the whole story. What's often overlooked is how essential purpose and engagement are to staying truly alive. Purpose can come in many forms: volunteering, creative expression, spiritual practices. But one of the most accessible and overlooked forms of purpose is the conversations we have with others. The kind of friend who asks you, "What do you really believe?" or "How have your views changed over time?" is the kind of person who activates something deeper in you. These are friends who don't just chat about the weather, they talk about the climate of your soul. Gerontology, the study of aging, has consistently shown that older adults who engage in meaningful and intellectually stimulating conversations experience slower cognitive decline. In a 10-year longitudinal study by the University of Michigan, researchers found that seniors who regularly discussed books, current events, and philosophical topics with peers had a 38% slower rate of cognitive impairment. In addition, these individuals showed higher levels of emotional resilience, lower rates of depression, and greater satisfaction with life. Dr. Emily Carter, a neurologist specializing in aging, notes, "Neural plasticity doesn't end with youth. The brain continues to grow and adapt when challenged. Intellectual friendships function like cognitive workouts. They keep the mind nimble and the heart full." Beyond cognition, having a friend who shares your values helps create emotional clarity. It's easy, especially in older age, to feel invisible or unheard, but when someone reflects your deepest beliefs, whether about kindness, justice, simplicity, or spiritual wisdom, you feel seen. You remember who you are and what matters to you. These friendships are often marked by calm, mutual respect, and emotional safety. There's no pressure to impress, no race to the finish, just 2 souls walking a similar path, sometimes side by side, sometimes from a distance, always in resonance. Don't seek someone who agrees with you on every little thing. That's not connection, that's convenience. Instead, look for alignment. Someone who sees the world through a lens of shared values, even if their conclusions differ. Disagreement can be beautiful when it arises from mutual respect and a shared moral compass. Join interest-based communities, book clubs, discussion groups, online forums for older adults focused on philosophy, spirituality, or social justice. Look for conversations that leave you thinking, not just entertained. When you meet someone who gets it, invest in that relationship. Water it. Let it grow slowly and deeply. In the twilight of life, when so much has changed, our routines, our bodies, even our roles, the one thing that still holds immense power is a nourishing friendship. A friend who engages your mind, respects your values, and challenges you gently is not just good company, they're medicine for the soul. Treasure that kind of friend, or become that kind of friend for someone else, because in the end, it's not just about how many years we live, but how richly we live them. Number 4. The friend who shows up in hard times. There are moments in life when words fail, when pain wraps itself around the heart so tightly that nothing anyone says can loosen it. In those moments, we don't need clever phrases or grand gestures. We need presence. Just presence. And in old age, this kind of presence becomes even more precious. After Walter's wife passed away, the world seemed to move on as if nothing had happened. People said polite condolences, dropped off food, and then disappeared back into their busy lives. But Ray was different. He didn't knock with a casserole and awkward smiles. He just showed up day after day with 2 cups of coffee. One for him, one for Walter. They didn't talk much, they didn't need to. Ray sat beside his old friend in silence. Some days they stared out the window. Other days they watched a baseball game, barely commenting. But Ray kept showing up. And slowly, without needing to say it, Walter's grief found a companion, not someone to fix it, just someone to witness it. When we're young, pain can be loud. There are cries, wails, slammed doors, and long phone calls to friends. But in old age, pain wears a quieter face. It's the soft ache of losing someone you've shared decades with. It's the sting of seeing your children grow up and grow distant. It's the fear that one day you'll fall in the kitchen and no one will find you for hours. It's not explosive. It's constant, a low hum in the background of every day. In that silence, a friend who shows up without being asked, without needing anything in return, is worth more than gold. They don't come to fix you. They come to stand beside you in the storm, and in doing so, they remind you that you are not invisible, that your pain is seen, that you matter. In grief counselling, we often talk about the protective factors that help someone heal from a major loss. You might think it's therapy or religion or even time. But again and again, studies show the same result. The most powerful predictor of healing is the presence of one emotionally steady person. Just one. Not someone who tries to cheer you up with platitudes like, everything happens for a reason. Not someone who disappears when things get uncomfortable, but someone who stays, someone who can sit in the discomfort of your grief without needing to make it pretty or fast forward it to a resolution. And this presence doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be small, consistent gestures, a weekly lunch, a phone call every Sunday, a simple just checking in text. Over time, these tiny moments become lifelines. You don't need the right words, just be there. There's a reason so many people disappear when someone is grieving. They feel helpless. They don't know what to say. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing, so they say nothing at all. But here's the truth. You don't need the right words. There are no right words. There is no sentence that can erase grief. What people remember isn't what you said. It's that you showed up. You sat next to them in the funeral home. You poured them a glass of water when they forgot to eat. You remembered the anniversary. You didn't flinch when the tears came. You didn't try to rush them back to normal. In old age, our worlds often get smaller. Friends move away. Some pass on. Families grow busy. Loneliness creeps in, not with a bang, but with the slow erosion of regular connection. In that quiet, the friend who knocks on the door anyway becomes a lifeline, a witness, a warm hand in the dark. So if you're wondering how to help someone you love, especially someone older who may be grieving, start by just showing up. Bring coffee, bring silence, bring nothing at all. Just your presence, and then come back tomorrow. Because in the end, it's not our words that heal, it's our presence. And the quiet promise, I'm still here. We spend so much of our lives trying to fit in, trying to be accepted, trying to be liked by everyone. But as we grow older, something shifts. We begin to understand that it's not the quantity of friends that matters, it's the quality. It's not how many people know your name, but how many truly know your heart. In our later years, we realize the power of meaningful connections, the kind that don't just pass the time, but pass the test of time. The 4 friends you need aren't just companions for laughter. They're the ones who sit with you in silence, remember your stories, walk beside you in storms, and celebrate your quiet victories. But here's something just as important. This video isn't only about finding those 4 people. It's also about becoming one of them. When you offer someone your full attention without judgment, when you show up consistently even in small ways, when you grow alongside someone and cheer them on, when your presence alone says, you're not alone, you're not just being a friend, you're becoming someone unforgettable. You're becoming someone worth choosing. So today, do something simple but profound. Call someone. Sit quietly with someone. Write a heartfelt letter. Join a group or reconnect with one. Just be present. because friendship in old age isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline, and every small act builds that bridge. We'd love to hear from you. What's one small thing you'll do today to nurture connection? Share in the comments. We're listening. Have you found your 4? Or are you still on the journey? If this video touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps Golden Years Balance continue making content that truly matters. Thank you for spending this time with us. Until next time, stay connected, stay kind.